Today, stories of sacrifice and bravery as British Columbians gathered alongside veterans and active military personnel to honor and remember all who have served in this country. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. We begin our Remembrance Day coverage in Vancouver, where after a 2-year pandemic hiatus, crowds were back at Victory Square. The yearly ceremony dates back to 1924, 2 years after the First World War ended. Today, it included the March of Veterans, wreath placement at the base of the cenotaph, and remarks from new Mayor Ken Sim. Attendees observed 2 minutes of silence at 11 a.m. to pay their respects. Now, this year's Remembrance Day celebration in Ladner saw a 103-year-old veteran join the parade to pay his respect to his fallen colleagues. But there was something even more special about his attendance today. The CBC's Saurabh Sandhu was there to capture it all.
To be a veteran is a special feeling. To be a 100-year-old veteran, even more. But for Hugh Melville Brown, today marked a day he won't forget. After all these years, he attended his first Remembrance Day ceremony.
Well, that's pretty exciting,
Melville Brown fought in World War II and the Korean War, and his entire family joined him in Ladner to honor him.
We were all excited. They came from everywhere, our family.
The whole family were just so proud of him and how far he's come.
I got a lot of them. That's only part of them.
This is a fraction.
Melville Brown's family says he's never talked much about his time in wars. Until lately, he has started to open up and share his stories. And while he may have forgotten the names of his colleagues, he still remembers their faces.
Well, I sure do.
Hundreds of others also gathered at Ladner Memorial Park to pay their respects, one by one, laying wreaths at the cenotaph. Quietly remembering the ones that were lost, as Melville Brown looked on. Time may have faded some painful memories of his past, but even at this age, he likes to share a good laugh.
The youngest one of the family. One of the youngest.
Can you remember their names?
Yeah.
What's her name?
I kind of forgot her name.
Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Ladner.
We take you to our province's capital now, where people gathered in front of the legislature today.
Having a large upswelling of support from the local community really is important for people in particular that have lost loved ones. So I think it's very important to show our respect, to honor the sacrifice of those that lost their lives.
Officials participated in a procession and fired ceremonial cannons while community members stopped to pay their respects. Staying on the island, but heading to Duncan, where a man is set to receive France's top honor for his contribution as a Canadian soldier fighting in the Second World War. But as Karen Larson reports, that's only one of the reasons Fernand Labrie is extraordinary. His age is another.
I'll be honest with you, I wasn't afraid.
Fernand Labrie may be 100 years old, but his memories of the 1942 Dieppe raid are as vivid as ever. So is the rather salty rallying cry of his Canadian Forces Maisonneuve Regiment during the Second World War.
Live today, tomorrow. That was our motto. I couldn't speak English then, but that word I knew.
Labrie was 20 when the Dieppe raid took place, a cipher specialist aboard a ship carrying soldiers and TNT to the shores of France, on standby to fight Nazis. As it turns out, he never saw action in Dieppe, but he did land at Juno Beach soon after D-Day 2 years later, fighting his way through much of Europe. It's for these reasons Labrie is being recognized with France's Order of the Legion of Honor. The award can be traced back to Napoleon Bonaparte, who created the medal in 1802 to recognize outstanding service to France.
It's very important to recognize those who came from afar, from Canada, to liberate my country during Second World War, so that we never forget those friends and allies.
We're thrilled for my father. We're thrilled as a family. It's quite an honor, and that he's making very light of it, but I think that a lot of soldiers didn't feel the importance of what they were doing.
Labrie says he is happy and humbled to be recognized by France.
That seems pretty impressive. Yeah, I never expected that. I was just one of millions, so why me?
The Legion of Honor Medal will be awarded in a ceremony at Labrie's Duncan, BC home, November 17th. Karen Larson, CBC News, Vancouver.
And as Canada honors its vets, many who have served say it's time to take a hard look at the barriers they face when it comes to accessing health services. In cities like Vancouver, advocates say there just aren't enough veteran counseling and mental health services to go around. And as John Hernandez reports, what is available can be costly.
Butch and Teresa Boucher are trying their hardest to heal. The pair both served in the military and suffer from PTSD.
I came home and I wasn't the same person.
For Butch, the stress from his Navy days off the coast of Somalia protecting UN ships from pirates still lingers.
I was the tasked to supervise a team of 7 people who were gathering intelligence to know which harbor was safe, where the pirates were operating, what ships they held hostage.
For years, the Bouchers had received counseling and other health treatments in Ottawa, but they moved to Vancouver in 2021 and have struggled to secure the same services since.
We're strained mentally because we're not getting those services, but also because it's so expensive here and because there's just a lack of military services available.
Services plagued by long wait lists and price points they simply can't afford.
The amounts that all of those service providers charges are very much in excess of what is covered by Veterans Affairs.
We need more people to help with our counseling and psychology, just to deal with the traumas that we've been exposed to.
James Dunn, who served for 3 decades, including tours in Afghanistan, knows how hard transitioning back to regular life can be.
Sometimes my sons would have to walk gingerly around because I get startled suddenly and I suddenly go right into go mode. It's not healthy in a family relationship. So
he now volunteers at the Veterans Transition Network, a support center that also helps those who have returned home find help. But it's not always easy.
We'll lean in and we'll see what we can do to get you the help that you are entitled to.
Organizers here say many veterans struggle accessing the benefits that are guaranteed by Veterans Affairs Canada, from challenges navigating paperwork to service costs exceeding what's covered.
The cost of accessing counseling and again the process of potentially getting reimbursed for that cost can be a really significant hurdle between a veteran and getting access to care. And certainly, in places like Vancouver or Toronto, there's such a lack of consistency in terms of what the costs may be.
In a statement, Veterans Affairs Canada said it's looking at ways to improve its benefits program, including potentially raising rates in certain provinces. But for those in need now, each day that goes by without supports they're entitled to is a compounding struggle.
There comes a time when you're just tired. Like, I don't have it in me to fight anymore. I'm tired.
A struggle that can make them feel forgotten, even on a day when they're supposed to be honored. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, thousands of people gathered today at the National War Memorial in Ottawa, a chance to honor the lives that have been lost in Canada's service. This year's Silver Cross mother was Candy Greff. Her son was the last Canadian soldier to die in Afghanistan. And placed at the foot of the tomb of the unknown soldier was a flag, Canada's red ensign, recovered from the beach on the day of the Dieppe landing in 1942. A stunning setback for the Kremlin in its war in Ukraine. After the break, the celebrations as Russia withdraws from a strategic southern city. Welcome to our commercial-free live stream. Students from a school board in Ottawa participated in a special class project to mark this Remembrance Day, all part of a plan that teaches the history of the poppy, the significance of Remembrance Day, and the need to protect our planet. Sandra Abma has more.
At St. Anne's School in Canada, grade 6 students are helping a kindergarten class tear red paper into 1-inch pieces.
Good job.
And then toss those scraps into a bowl of water, where they will soak for 5 minutes.
Good job.
These kids are on their way to making their own poppies, not the plastic kind that are sold each year, as this 6th grader will tell you.
We're making these type of poppies because they're different, they're good for the environment. We can actually plant them to make more poppies, actual poppies.
It's hands-on learning about the meaning of Remembrance Day and sustainability.
Our next step, we need the blender.
It's a big blend of history, a bit of chemistry, arts and crafts, and environmental studies. That's a bit too noisy for some, especially these two.
The consistency and the pace is good.
This early childhood educator says these kids are learning a lot.
I believe that this is important for our students to learn that they have responsibilities towards their environment and towards the planet Earth, and that was my goal signing up for this project, to teach them that this is true, that there were soldiers, that they gave their life away for us to have peace, and this is now our responsibility to take care of the environment, that they can live in it peacefully.
Don't make me right. It feels gross.
Now comes the messy part, taking pulped up paper goo and turning it into something to show off with pride. Poppies that contain real poppy seeds, and for these children, seeds of understanding.
Poppies are important because it helps us remember those who fought for us, that we could be safe.
Peace is being kind and sharing toys and being friends.
The final product, this compostable poppy, will be planted in the school's Peace Garden, where it will bloom again in spring and for many springs to come. Sandra Abma, CBC News, Ottawa.
Burnaby RCMP is asking for your help in identifying a man suspected of flashing children at an elementary school. The incident happened yesterday morning around 11 a.m. at Maywood School in the Metrotown area. Police say the man was pacing in the area before exposing himself. He was wearing a blue jacket, black pants, and blue and white runners. He had a black medical mask on. Anyone with information is asked to call the Burnaby RCMP. Well, there were huge celebrations today in the Ukrainian city of Kherson after the withdrawal of Russian troops from the key port city that was captured in the early days of the war. Russia's defense minister says it withdrew 30,000 troops in what's being called a redeployment. Kherson is the only regional capital captured by Russian forces since the invasion started in February. Many observers see it as a significant blow to Russia's war effort. Well, many people in Germany are learning to prepare for future blackouts as the country deals with an energy crisis.
Ja, hier können wir mal Licht kurbeln. Wir haben jetzt gerade gar kein Licht. Batterien sind super wichtig.
This organization guides participants through tasks that usually require electricity, like cooking a meal. Students have to carry out part of the lesson using only a flashlight. German officials have warned of possible gas rationing this winter due to plunging energy imports from Russia. And as anti-government protests continue in Iran, new evidence that the regime is striking out beyond its borders. In this case, it happened in Britain. Margaret Evans explains that government's response and Canada's reaction.
The wall outside Iran's embassy here in London, not high enough to escape the blood-red paint hurled at its windows by protesters in recent weeks. Now, Iran's top diplomat has been summoned by the British Foreign Office over allegations of regime-sponsored death threats against Iranian journalists based in London. Iran International's executive news editor says 2 of his journalists have been contacted by the British police.
They have been told that they are under significant and imminent and considerable threat.
Many of the channel's reports on the demonstrations inside Iran, he says, are based on user-generated content, which is then verified. Set against government censorship in Iran, it's made the channel a major source for Persian speakers looking for news on the protests. Tehran accuses the channel and other Persian language services here of inciting violence.
The concern of the regime is about the level of trust that people in Iran have in our reports about Iran.
Nobel laureate Shireen Ebadi wants Western nations to do more than reprimand Iranian diplomats. We urge especially Western countries to bring back their ambassadors from Iran, she says. That way they can show the people of Iran they're against the regime. Ebadi was meeting with Canada's International Development Minister Harjit Sajjan in London. Canada hasn't had diplomatic relations with Iran since 2012.
I mean, every government's going to have to make their own decision because there are always different circumstances, but I agree with Dr. Ebadi that every nation needs to take a very strong stance against Iran.
Sajjan says he sought out Ebadi for input on what more Canada can do to support Iranian women, in particular, demanding their rights. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
Elon Musk has scrapped his new Twitter Blue paid subscription model after just 2 days. On Wednesday, Twitter began selling the Blue verification checkmarks that previously indicated a high-profile account, only to be flooded with fake impersonation accounts. As the CBC's Lindsay Duncombe tells us, this is just the latest setback for a platform that's losing money and trust.
Now that the richest man in the world controls what's beamed from your Twitter app, it's even tougher to know what's true on the platform and what's not.
I have definitely realized that I should not believe all the stuff on Twitter.
Do you trust what you read on Twitter?
Depends on the source, but if it's a legit source, for sure, yes.
It used to be those blue check marks signaled legitimacy, but then Elon Musk started selling blue check marks for cash. All of a sudden, scrollers saw LeBron James asking for a trade, oil company British Petroleum admitting it killed the planet, and drug manufacturer Eli Lilly offering insulin for free. All fake.
It's undermined the entire blue check marking system and it's taken away another source of revenue for Musk.
And revenue is something Twitter needs badly. Advertisers are fleeing. Huge debt means interest payments of more than $1 billion a year. Musk himself has hinted at bankruptcy.
And the challenge for Twitter is that it's always struggled with revenue. It's not the cash machine that Google or Facebook is. Its value really lies in the community of people that use it and the news and information it provides to society as a whole.
Regular users are already looking ahead to a post-tweet world.
I think probably Twitter's in its last days, and that's fine. Someone else will replace it. Someone smarter will run something else better.
Should Musk fail, there could be spillover into other sectors. He leveraged Tesla stock in order to pay for the platform, linking the prosperity of the world's largest electric car manufacturer to Twitter. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
He fought and died in World War II, but when he returned to his hometown of Port Alberni, he wasn't allowed to be buried alongside his fellow soldiers. That story of an Indigenous soldier is next.
This year, Sergeant Mitsui, at 98 years old, was flown out from Hamilton, Ontario to relight this war memorial. Sergeant Mitsui is one of two Japanese-Canadian World War I veterans who is alive today. We trust with the shining of this war memorial that it will serve as a permanent memorial for all veterans who have served and died for our country.
You look good. You look great.
The light on this war memorial was extinguished after Pearl Harbor was bombed. Now, more than 4 decades later, the City of Vancouver and Vancouver's Japanese-Canadian Citizens Association have raised the money to restore the light.
I would now like to ask Mr. Mitsui to come forth to relight the war memorial, which we hope will shine forever.
And after 44 years, he has to wait a little longer. It takes 10 minutes for the light to go on.
Our father is proud to be asked to represent all his comrades who are gone before him, but they're not forgotten. This is a memorable event for him, and he says, thank you, everyone. Thanks, and God bless you all.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Well, it's good news for snow sport enthusiasts. Cypress Mountain will open for the season tomorrow. That's 10 days earlier than last year.
You know, I went up in a snowcat the other day. You know, we're wall to wall, we're edge to edge. Snow coverage is huge up top.
This is the third year in a row under La Niña conditions, so Cyprus officials expect a good snow season throughout the winter. Pre-booking is required for mountain access. This, of course, is time to bring in meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. You going to make the trek out there tomorrow, Joe?
Probably not tomorrow, but I'm definitely going to dust off the old snowboard, maybe do some preliminary waxing, reaping the rewards, Anita, of the cold start to November. And yeah, perfect conditions for making snow. It's basically been 0 to -2 degrees up on the top of all of our locals for basically the past 10 days. So yeah, nice to see some fresh powder out there. We did see some wet snow this morning, down to around 150 meters for Remembrance Day ceremonies, just a few showers out there. And you can see parts of southern Vancouver Island and Victoria seeing a few showers as well. This is as that Pacific system moves in. I am still tracking the other system on the other side of the country. This is the remnants of Hurricane Nicole, bringing a good soaking and gusty winds, even some snow, and 18 to 20 degree temperatures for parts of the Maritimes. That snow, though, definitely in place for Newfoundland. We are right in between all of that. Very seasonal for the next few days as we head into the weekend. 7s for afternoon highs here in Metro Vancouver. A slight chance of a morning shower on Sunday. It looks very slight at this point, and we might get down to the freezing mark. But so far, that precip is happening in the first half of the day. And Anita, seasonal, dry. This is one of the most benign forecasts we've had in some time, and I think all of us will take it.
No kidding, that's for sure. Thanks, Joe.
Yep, you're welcome.
Well, when war broke out in 1939, thousands of Indigenous men and women were among those who signed up to serve. And while they fought alongside their fellow Canadians, when they returned home, their treatment was anything but equal. The CBC's Wamish Hamilton remembers his uncle, who to this day rests apart from his fellow soldiers in Port Alberni.
It's Remembrance Day, and like every Remembrance Day, I think of my late uncle, George Hamilton II, who was otherwise known affectionately to all as Bud. He was a member of the Canadian Scottish Rifles and was killed during an engagement in Belgium during the Second World War. Like other Indigenous people during that period of time, he was forced to spend his childhood in residential school. And all that while into his adulthood, he suffered all manner of racism and discrimination that Indigenous people were subjected to during those years. Yet, he still felt patriotic when the Second World War broke out, and he enlisted in the Canadian Army, fighting with the Canadian Scottish Rifles. While he was overseas, he sent letters home to my father that I remember reading. They said in part that he got along really well with the men in his unit. It's though in that kind of time, during war, maybe in the heat of battle, that those other things like racism and discrimination don't matter. He died en route home of his wounds, but the indignities of racism and discrimination at that time didn't stop while he was alive. They continued after he was dead. When he was brought home to Port Alberni, he wasn't allowed to be buried in the field of honor with other veterans who were killed. Instead, he was buried in the Hoopatisset First Nation Cemetery 200 meters away. Bud may not be buried with his fellow soldiers in the field of honor. Instead, he lays at rest in the cemetery with his mother and his father, his brother and his sisters. He enlisted in the army and fought for the government that made him spend his childhood in residential school. And he died on the front line for a country that hated him. But on days like Remembrance Day, that discrimination is set aside. Members of the Canadian Legion lay wreaths at the Field of Honor, but they also make the 200-meter march from the Field of Honor to the Hoopatisset First Nation Cemetery, where they lay a wreath and perform a small ceremony at Bud's grave. On that day, too, I've always had a vision that the spirit of the soldiers in the Field of Honor see Bud over here, and they beckon him over to join them for refreshments and war stories and whatever else soldiers do. Wamish Hamilton, CBC News, Port Alberni.
Thanks for being with us on this Remembrance Day when CBC Vancouver News. We leave you tonight with scenes from Vancouver's ceremony at Victory Square. Good night.